Hello, my name is Sean Chandler, and I'm very excited to get to share my story with you. Also kind of terrified, because essentially what I'm going to share with you is some of the most exciting things about my life, and also all the stuff about it that I wish wasn't true. All the pieces that I'm most embarrassed about, all the pieces that hurt the people around me the most, that's what we're going to be talking about. And so buckle up, it's going to be exciting. Also, they told me I only had 25 minutes. I never only go 25 minutes. So I'm going to try to talk really fast. So as I said, my name is Sean Chandler. Right there in the back, that is my lovely wife. We have been married for almost 15 years. We'll hit 15 years in December of this year. We have 3 lovely kids who are at our home being babysat by our nieces and nephews, which has me terrified. We got a picture of the kids, if we could put that right up here. And there they are. Went to go get ice cream in downtown Round Rock a couple months back and got this amazing picture out of that. So the reason he wanted to share my story today is because the last 6 years has been interesting for me, to say the least. So I kicked things off 6 years ago, and I was a pastor at Hutto Bible Church. I was actually at Hutto Bible Church for about 8 years, from 2008 until 2016. I have a picture of that one. These next ones, I'll have a picture for each of these ones I'm about to talk about. So I was a pastor at Hutto Bible Church. There we are, right there, looking very pastorally with pastoral type glasses. I actually officiated a wedding right outside those barn doors right there. So right there, you can see me dressed up to officiate a wedding. My wife has been in a bunch of weddings that were held in this barn as well. Then I'm also a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. That happened within the last few years. So there, if you're wondering, all those people that give movies odd scores that you don't understand, you can send all your hate my way, because I'm one of those people. I was a paint delivery driver for 2 years. So that was a little bit of an interesting path, going from pastor to paint delivery driver and spilling large amounts of paint wherever I went. I'm currently a full-time YouTuber. So now I work from home, making videos, talking about movies. So there you can see me right there. And as a part of being Rotten Tomatoes critic guy and YouTuber guy, I was actually invited to the press junket for the Terminator movie that came out a couple years back. So I got to interview the new Terminator for Terminator Dark Fate. And in the process of that, I was so nervous, I completely embarrassed myself. We have a clip of that.
I'll tell you after.
Well, thank you for interviewing me. Or excuse me. I'm interviewing you. I started off my first interview of someone ever, was like, I finally got invited, this is amazing. And I went, thanks for interviewing me. And yeah, that's how that kicked off. And then the other thing that's happened in the last 6 years is I spent 3 months in an intensive alcohol addiction program. And so really, as we go into today, we're going to talk a lot about the first one and the last one. How was it that I, as a pastor, that spoke on sin, that spoke on secrets every single week, had my own sin and secrets that took over, that almost destroyed my entire life? But then on the flip side of that, that God's grace entered and was able to bring me to the other side of that. To say that with a room this size, there's plenty of people in this room that are struggling with major things. And I could tell you, I was as deep in it as any of you are, or might be. Like I say, there's hope on the other side through God's grace. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get to that part to it, I'm going to go through my whole childhood. We're going to get like the whole life story. So I grew up in a split household. My mom, good church lady. In fact, she's worked at a church for the last 20 years in Pflugerville, been on staff there, and took us to church every single Sunday. So grew up going to church, but then I had my dad, who claimed to be an atheist, was a hard drinker, went out to the bars every single night, and that was kind of this split household that I was brought up in. Loving mother, teaching me all the right things, and a father that did all the wrong things. And it wasn't just that he drank, but he was a severe alcoholic, to the point that eventually he did drink himself to death when I was 20 years old. So I grew up in a household where alcohol was only something that I saw as a bad, dangerous thing that wasn't in control. And beyond that, I grew up thinking my dad was quirky and weird because of alcohol. And I had all these funny stories about my dad. And I figured out in my 20s, as I started telling these hilarious stories about my dad to people around me, that they weren't actually quirky, funny stories, they were stories of abuse. So like, yeah, my dad, he was so wild. One day he thought he'd give us a new way to give us spanking, so he got a 2x4 and he hit my sister, and then he hit me. And I remember telling that story to someone one time and being like, oh, that's not a funny story, I was abused. And when you grow up with something, you don't always realize what you're in. You don't realize that, oh, that's horrible. And I literally, I was working with teenagers by that point in time, I was 22 years old or something like that, and I realized if any one of my students told me any one of these stories that I'm saying about my dad, I would have a wildly different response than what I've been treating it like my entire life. But he was my dad, and you love your dad even if your dad's not the best person. So I grew up in, like I said, this kind of split home, always very plugged into church, prayed to receive Christ when I was in middle school, didn't have any big behavioral issues or anything like that, but wasn't super great kid either. Just kind of like so many people in church world, that mediocre middle, avoiding the big bad stuff, but not doing all that great on a lot of the small things either. And so when I graduated from high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, so I just kind of hung around, went to ACC for a while, trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And I'd avoided alcohol. I knew I probably will have a bias towards alcohol. I probably have a soft spot in that area, so I should avoid that at all costs. And for the most part, I did, all the way past, so I was 20 years old, that's when my dad died. He drank himself to death. He was a very intelligent man, and then he just started to deteriorate when he was 54 years old and just lost his cognitive faculties, lost control, and then very swiftly died from the effects of alcohol. So I had only seen it as this dangerous thing that I knew I should avoid. And then one day, when I'm 21 years old, over the legal drinking age, I'm at my house, and I get a phone call from a friend, or my friend's mom, that my friend's brother was in a coma. And it was this very strange incident where there's an accident, and he was 16 at high school, and he was found hanging in the drama department at the high school. And it looked like a suicide attempt. He claimed it wasn't a suicide attempt, but they didn't know what was going on, but he was in a coma, and I had to go pick up my friend, drive him to the hospital. And that night, the friend came over to my house, brought over a bottle of alcohol, and he was like, hey man, my brother's in a coma, he might die, and I just need to unwind. And in that moment, I started to believe a lie that started to become a recurring belief that I had that was very toxic for the next 10 years or 13 years of my life. So lie number one we're gonna look at today is I believed that it's okay because I had a bad day. Simple enough. It's okay to do something that I know is unwise. We have a slide for this one, and I'll have slides for most of these kind of for the next little bit. It's okay because, and you can fill in the blank whatever that is for you. Sometimes it's okay because it's only once. It's okay because I deserve it to celebrate. For me, my thought was, it's okay. I'm over 21, and my friend's having this horrible situation, so why don't I'm at home, it's safe. And I'm not making a comment on whether you should drink in any context, but I knew who I was, and I knew who my father was. And what was certainly something that was unwise for me, I believed this lie, it's okay because my friend is having a bad day. And that lie kept repeating in my life. And the friend's brother came out of a coma, and it was pretty big. He came out of it a different person, had like a different personality after that incident. But jump forward, my grandma died, and at the funeral, they had alcohol at the event afterwards, and I was like, well, it was a bad day. It's okay because we had a bad day. And I drank a little bit. Always aware, I need to be careful because of my family history. But It's okay today because, and fill in that blank. But the reality on this is that sin is sin, and foolishness is foolishness. So that's the next one here. Sin is sin, foolishness is foolishness. And if you know something is unwise for you, if you know something is a sin, just because you had a bad day doesn't justify it. Which you know that. But most things that are so true, most things, the stupidest mistakes we make, we know we shouldn't do them. We know it's a bad idea. But in that moment, we believe some lie that sets us down a path. And so then a few years down the line, my wife and I had been married for 51 weeks. We were 1 week away from our 1-year anniversary, and our apartment got robbed, like cleaned out. We came back from 2 days vacation away, came home, went to open the back door, and the chain was locked on the inside. And we're like, what? How could we lock the chain? And then we went, wait, we looked inside and everything was just destroyed on the inside of our apartment. And like the place that's supposed to be our safe space where we can feel secure was violated. So there's an excuse to drink. Once again, it's okay because my home's been violated. So it's just, at this point in time, it was very irregular that I would drink. But when something bad happened, that was always that excuse why it was okay for me to drink. Running concurrent to this, it was at Bible college. It's actually how I met my wife. I was about to go off to Bible college, and she had been attending the Bible college I was about to attend. So I cornered her and was like, hey, what church do you go to in Columbia, South Carolina? Apparently that's a really good line to pick up a girl that goes to Bible college, because we got married a year and a half after that. And so I graduated from Bible college, and as soon as that happened, Hutto Bible Church or Hill Country Bible Church, Hutto, depending on which time period you're in, they basically called me up and said, hey, we need a youth person. Are you crazy? And I was like, I don't think I'm crazy, or not any different crazy than I was before. And they're like, perfect. We want the crazy that you were before. And so they ended up hiring me, and that was in 2008. And that's kind of how we ended up in the Hutto area, which I guess in another sense is how we ended up here. But when you're in church world, you know what's going on in everyone's life. When you don't know what's going on in everyone's life, you're curious. Gossip's kind of fun. As soon as you do know everything, it's not as much fun anymore. As soon as you actually care about everyone and you show up on a Sunday and you know every husband in the church that's thinking about leaving their wife, that's in the process of having an affair, that takes a toll on you. When you know every marriage that's in trouble, every child that has abuse going on, and you can't fix it. You care about them and you do everything you can, but you can't fix it. And that started to take a toll on me. And when you believe the lie, it's okay because there's a lot of bad days in church world. There's a lot of days where there's weight put on your shoulders that you're not really designed to carry. That's why we're given the Holy Spirit. But that's not where I turned, because I believed the lie. It's okay to indulge in something I know is not a good idea. And so that started a regular pattern of drinking. And it leads to the second lie on here. So often we believe that sin leads to freedom, because we think, I want to do something. I want to be free to do what I want. The reality, though, is that sin is a trap, and it sets us down paths where there's no good options. And so for me, if you had been a fly on the wall in my house watching me during this time period, you wouldn't think I drank anything weird, dangerous, or anything like that. But because of that family history, I kept taking step after step, slowly down a path. And I thought it was freedom. I thought it was unwinding. I thought it was, well, it's okay because, but really it was just me walking into a trap. It was me heading into something that there was no easy way to get out of it. And just a lot of incidents happened in the first 3 years that I was a pastor that just took a toll on me in a way I just wasn't prepared for. There's even just some random tragic events happened. My mom got married, in 2010, and 4 months later, he died. Just tragic kind of medical accident. And just a small series of these types of incidents happened where I kept believing that lie. It's okay because. And I just need to unwind. I need a little bit of freedom. And instead found myself in a trap. And I remember the specific day where I knew, wait, I think I might have a problem, was normal Sunday night, long day of church activities, just wanted to unwind, and I'd had a little bit to drink, not a ton, and I remember going into the kitchen and being like, I don't want my wife to know I'm drinking a little bit more, and so I opened the refrigerator door just the right way so that it blocked the path from where she was at, from where I was, and then had another drink, making sure that she couldn't see me doing it. And in that moment, I even remember in that moment thinking, wait a minute, isn't that what alcoholics do? Which normally if you have a thought, isn't that what alcoholics do? You probably have a problem and need to work on that. But I thought, well, no. If someone else was doing that, I wouldn't judge them for this. Therefore, it's okay. But I had watched my father go down this path, and I kept choosing to take one more step down this path. And after that moment, I started to think, man, I should probably dial it back a little bit. And I started doing this other line in my head where I would say, this is the last time. This is the last time. And anyone that's dealt with addiction and tried to fight it, you have these thoughts where it's like, this is the last time. I have one last hurrah, and then I'll pull back. Then I'll make a change next week, next month, New Year's resolution. I have this one more time mentality. But the reality is sin makes you stupid. It never works like that. And in fact, if you look at like the 12-step programs, like if you go to AA, the second one in there literally says, I reclaimed my sanity. The word insane is built into the second step because the thought process of addiction, it's just crazy bananas. It doesn't actually make any sense. Because sin makes you stupid. And sometimes we head down these paths and we just keep going even though it makes no sense and we know we're slowly losing control of things. And so I put myself in a pretty compromised position, and where things just spiraled out of control was in December of 2012. And as I said, I was a youth pastor here in the Hutto area, and there was a major suicide at the high school. And if you're in the right age range in Hutto High School at the time, you probably know what I'm referring to. And it shook my youth group, it shook the community. I was a counselor on site the day after it happened, and it was just one of those things that just kind of rocked everyone. And I'd already been living without any margin. I was living on the edge of wisdom for what I should be doing as someone who probably has alcoholic genes or has alcoholic genes, and I knew that. And then when that happened, it just started a series of months of tragedy after tragedy. 4 months after that, one of the students in my youth ministry committed suicide. Several other members of the church died in like car accidents. My grandparents died that year, and just unrelated to that, my responsibilities were changed to where I was overworked, and so I was living on the edge of danger, and then everything collapsed in on me. Everything that would push me further into addiction, further into it's all right because there's just a reason, a really good reason, but not a good reason for me. And I just went so far down this path to the point that it became a full-blown addiction. And if you've ever struggled with real addiction, it is a sick trap that is pure insanity. And there's no way to describe it. Even now as a person, I look back, it's weird because it doesn't seem like me. I don't know why I was doing what I was doing, where I thought it was going, but the insanity of addiction took over and life just went crazy. Sometimes in life you go so far down a path where there's no good options. And very quickly that happened to me. And I got to a point in time where I went, wait a minute, I need help. But if I go get help, do I keep my job as a pastor? Well, I need to support my family. Well, I'm known as pastor guy. I like being known as like, I don't want to lose my reputation. I can't lose that. And just found myself in this place where I did not know where to turn and wasn't willing to do what I needed to do. And because of that, I decided to believe the next lie. I can fix myself. I can fix myself. Every single week, I went to church and preached, you can't fix yourself. You need the grace of God. That's like the central message of everything that I preached for as long as I've been a preacher person. You can't fix yourself. You need the grace of God. I can't, but he can't. That's what every single Sunday. But when it was my turn, when I needed grace, no, I can fix myself. This made to around the year 2014, our second child was born. And right after that, my wife said, I don't know what's going on, like, you're out of control. You gotta get help. I was like, why? I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my job. So I'll fix myself. So I tried to, like, in secret fix all this stuff about myself through just sheer willpower. The reality, though, is that sin grows in secret. The more you keep it hidden, the more you try and fix yourself without letting anyone else in, that's when it grows. That's when it gets worse. And if you've ever had like a secret sin thing, you know that. You've been there. You've watched it grow in your life. If you've ever had someone around you where you just watched them deteriorate as they had something where they wouldn't seek the help of people around them, and you just watched them fall apart, it's heartbreaking. In my case, I was trying to keep as much from my wife as I could, and she knew things, but then I'd have other times where I'd keep a good secret, then she'd find something out. But the whole time, I'm pastor guy at a church, living this double life of sorts. And I'd have 3 months of success, and then I'd fail, and I kept having this back and forth, trying to fix myself, and it didn't work very well. It went for 2 years of me trying to fix myself. And I through willpower, I could go 6 months without drinking, and then it would come back hard. And it would be right back to where I was at before. And what I didn't know at the time is that sort of rubber band, starting with alcohol, that destroys your body. And so I started doing this yo-yo quitting, starting, and I was starting to have weird side effects from doing this. And I didn't even know what they were. I didn't understand what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good. This led to 2016, and I'd had like a big stretch where things were good. And then I just, right before summertime, May 2016, hard back went into it, and was just, at this point in time, totally out of control. And it was right before summertime. If you're a youth pastor, that's the busiest season. It was right before I had all the stuff I had to do, I just collapsed into addiction, out of control, out of my mind, bonkers. All leading up to an event called Boot Camp that we did. It was like our training to do backyard Bible clubs. It was basically the biggest event we did every year. And we went off to do these training, and my body is going bananas from withdrawal being at this camp. And several of my youth leaders who had known me a long time, they walk up to me and they're like, hey man, I've known you a long time. You're a weird guy. Oh, cool, thanks. That's a weird starter for a conversation. Where are you going with this? Yeah, you're acting way weirder than normal. What do you mean? I'm not acting weirder than normal. Like, yeah, you are. I've known you 8 years. You can't lie to me. What's going on? Like, I'm not sleeping well. It's like, there's things like you're acting like you've been drunk the last week. This is like, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like something is very wrong with you. It's like, I haven't been sleeping. It's okay, well, you need to go home and get sleep, because you can't keep on like this. I'm going to believe you that substance isn't messing with your mind, but you got to go home. So I go home, and wife was at home with our 2 kids at the time. Like, hey, she's like, hey, what are you doing home? Well, I got sent home from camp. Are you sick? Not really. They just thought I needed more sleep. Why did they think you needed more sleep? They thought I was acting drunk. wife who has known that she thought I'd been doing good the last, 9 months or something like that. She's like, have you been drinking? Funny you should ask that. Yes. And she's like, I told you before, we're not doing this anymore. I'm not playing this game anymore. You need to go to the elder board and take care of this. Like, well, no, I can't do that. This is Bible Club week. Think of how this would affect everyone else. I can't do that. Well, think about this. We'll just wait 3 months. What about this? We'll wait. She's like, no, you need to fix this. Like, I'm done with this. I'm going to go tell them you're out of control. Okay. And I went and laid down, and I started actually researching on my phone the symptoms of alcohol withdrawal. Like I said, I watched my dad die in certain senses, over about 5 years, in another sense, really in the span of about a year. And I started reading, it was like, wait, I'm starting to have some of these symptoms that I watched him have. There was the path to his death. I don't know if I was 10 years away. I don't know if I was 10 months. I don't know. But all I know is I was starting to have the same symptoms. And like I had that moment of clarity of like, I've literally brought myself to the point where I'm seeing myself on the exact death path my father was on. It just had enough moment of a clarity where at 5 a.m, I woke my wife up and I said, yeah, you're right. This is going down right now. Called my mom. Imagine hard conversations calling your mom saying, Mom, this isn't like, I know I have a bit of a drinking problem. I don't have a bit of a drinking problem. It's as bad as you can imagine. My parents were divorced. That's a whole other story that I could have gone into, but obviously I go long. But even though they were divorced, my mom never stopped loving my dad, and she watched him die from alcohol. Alcohol was so much of what tore them apart. She was watched what happened to him. I was calling her up at 5 a.m, Mom, so you know this is really going down, and I'm going to tell the elder board. And she's like, well, are you sure you should do it? Like, yes, Mom. If I'm calling you, I'm sure about this. So the next day, sent an email to the elder board saying, hey guys, here's the 3-page written version of what you all just heard. Sent that into them, led to a series of conversations that basically turned into my resignation from the church, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I get healthy? And the other lie that I believed in all of this is that this is just my problem. This is my problem. I've got a drinking problem. Reality was, it wasn't just that I have a drinking problem. Everyone around me is hurt by my drinking problem. Your sin hurts everyone around you. And that's the piece that as soon as you have the clarity of being on the other side in realizing all that pain that my father caused me through his drinking, that's what I'm putting on everyone around me. That's what I've been doing to my wife really the last 3 years of secrets. And, oh, no, I got to fix myself. No, I got to keep this secret. No, all of that stuff. It's weight, just her carrying the weight of my sin, her feeling the pain of my sin. And then as soon as I came forward, everyone at the church, they were my friends, they were my church family. And I remember sitting down with a couple of my best friends from the church, still some of my best friends. Saw one of them earlier today, actually, sitting in my living room. We're just crying, and one of them saying, dude, you're like my best friend, and I had no idea. Just feeling my sin hurt all of these people around me. And at this point in time, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, not just to look healthy, but to get healthy. So I basically went to the elder board and said, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to leave? Do you want me to stay? What do I need to do to get healthy? Like, you guys make the plan. And they said, we don't want you to leave. And 5 years later, it's actually 5 years this month, we're still there. And actually ironically, I was here at this exact property earlier today shooting a baptism at the A-Days house for the church. They're like, hey, can you help us film a baptism? I'm like, yeah. So I was actually right over there earlier today. But 5 years later, we're still there. They asked us to stay, and they said, yeah, we'll support your family. We'll fund whatever recovery you have. You can't stay on staff with your current condition, but we're going to do whatever we can to help you get the employment you need and get the help that you need. And that's where we led to what I mentioned at the beginning, where I went into an outpatient program that was 3 months long of intensive alcohol addiction treatment. It was a very strange transition to go from pastor guy to being in a meeting where my best friend at the group was like a heroin junkie. That was a bit of a transition. But oddly, like in that meeting, she would say things and I'd be like, that makes so much sense to me. That's the weird, crazy stuff that I've been thinking the last few years. You just realized how crazy addiction can make you. So that's the bad side of the story. The good side of the story is 5 years later, 5 years and 10 days, 12 days later, I have not had a drop of alcohol since June 5th, 2016. And that is most certainly not because, man, I've got awesome willpower. Because that is absolutely not what happened. What happened is the grace of God. It says in James 4, but he gives us more grace. This is why Scripture said, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. What is pride? I can fix myself. That's the definition of pride. I'm more worried about what you think about me than what's really going on. I'm more concerned about looking like pastor guy than actual holiness. All of that's pride. I need to provide for my family. It's a good thing to do, but thinking it's all about me, that's pride. What's humility? I can't, but Jesus can. What is humility? I trust Him to provide for my family. I need to be obedient, and God will provide. What is humility? Humility is saying, whatever it takes, I'm going to submit to the elder board. I'm going to listen to my wife. I'm going to put it all out there so that I can get healthy. So in June 2016, that's what I did. Like, I'm surrendering everything to what others, the leadership of the church, tells me I need to do. Surrendered to be obedient to God. It says in 2 Corinthians 9, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. And that's what I had been preaching for years. It's the craziest thing. The sermon that I'd been preaching is like my like home run word or retreat sermon was the exact sermon that I needed in my life. The exact thing that had helped so many people with this message that God had used. That's the one that I needed to apply to my life of surrender and obedience. And so often, we think about grace as this thing for salvation when it comes to your justification, but I forgot that I needed grace for my daily sanctification. It was never about me fixing myself or any of those lies that I believed. It was always straight back to the cross. He did what I couldn't. And the power that He provided in that is what I should have turned to when all those hard moments happened. I was like, this is too much for me. Oh, I need alcohol. No, I needed the Holy Spirit. I needed God's grace in those moments. Every step along the way, that was the answer. And on the other side, that's what I finally started to embrace and figure out. And to give like a little final epilogue on all of this, of where kind of my life is at now. I was unemployed for a while. I didn't know how to get a job. All those fears I had about how will I provide, those were legitimate concerns. Those were real fears that how would I get a job that led to me having the paint job. It's because I wasn't able to get any other job. But in that kind of started the YouTube thing. It's just a hobby of like, I just need to put my energy somewhere. And what that's led to is having an audience big enough that every June 5th, I share my testimony on my channel. And it goes out to my thousands of subscribers, and a gigantic chunk of them are not believers. A gigantic chunk of them have their own addiction issues going on. And so through all of this, I've been able to share my story that's been heard by thousands of people. because of God's grace and everything that's happened over the last few years. And after I shared it just a week ago, every day I get a message from someone saying, hey man, thanks so much for sharing your story. I've been really struggling. I thought I was alone. And you saying that and seeing that there's light on the other side, that's exactly what I needed to hear to start to move forward, to start to get the help that I needed. Other people messaging me saying like, I haven't got all this religious stuff figured out, but I really appreciated hearing your story in the light that you put it in, and not just being about rules and telling people what to do, but like real world life change. And the final little piece in all of this is that after, I guess 2.5 years ago, our youngest child, Karis, was born. And we're trying to figure out what do we name the baby? And my wife went with, let's call her Karis. If you don't know, Karis is Greek for grace. And she was born right as we were seeing the good on the other side of the bad. Because 2016, 2017, those were some rough years. The process of undoing all the sin, all the bad, it was brutal. It was painful. There's nothing about that I would want to redo. And then on the other side, there's God's grace, God's blessing. And the last few years have been pretty amazing. I guess the world in general has been pretty wild the last year and a half. But besides that, for us as a family, it's been a lot of fun. And to have our little Karis, Grace, a little symbol of God's goodness in all of this. And the final thing I want to share with you, a verse I've been preaching for 10 years, is one of my favorite verses. It says in Ephesians 3:20, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine according to his power that works within us. I'd been preaching that for years and wasn't sure what it looked like in my life. And then in June 2016, I wasn't sure. I thought my life was maybe over. Like I didn't know. I couldn't see what was next. I could not imagine more. I didn't even know what to ask for. And then God's grace was able to work through my addictions and bring it out on the other side where my family kind of has an awesome life. And I have a story that helps people. And I thought, like, am I ever going to be able to preach again? Will I ever be able to be used by God again? Here I am right now. I even have a platform where my story can go out to thousands of people. So wherever you're at, whatever you're in the middle of, I know how bad it can be. I know how much you might be thinking, I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know who I can tell. There is hope on the other side through God's grace, through obedience, through the community of God's church. Talk to someone, let them know that you need help. God gives grace to the humble. Let's pray.